let's continue ask questions. We'll basically to trigger some more questions along from the audience that will go that way. So I guess probably I think we talk a lot about like education about and your different experiences all the way from the undergrad and to PhD, right? And right now you're
Yeah.
still actually working on your MBA degree. So I remember like Einstein, and there's a famous quote about education. He said education is a word remains after one has forgotten what um, he has learned in school. And so I'd like to ask you, what do you think the most important part, either skill set or and know-how that you have learned from all of the years at school?
Okay. I think a couple of things I would say that's important to focus on while you're at school. I think the most important thing for me is the curiosity part, I have to say. I think for undergrad, for master, for PhD, I think the most important learning for me is there's always things to learn. And this the feeling gets even stronger, I think, in my PhD because I think for undergrad and masters is still for most of the time you are intaking knowledge which are built by someone else from some other scholars. But for PhD, you're mostly trying to I would say navigate through the unknown field of some topic. I mean, it could be big, it could be small, but this has to be some. In the PhD, you are essentially creating some knowledge by contributing to one specific field by publishing papers, by contributing to some discussion or communities. So I think this is somewhere I learned, or I also enjoy the part as well to be curious about what can be achieved and then what you can contribute. So I think this is the number one thing I've learned from school, especially after doing research for 5 years. I think this is curiosity. And I think the number two thing I would say that I learned from school is ideally build yourself to be a T-shaped talent. I think this is something everybody says these days. I think this still makes sense a lot. I think to be T-shaped, you need to have some specialty in an area. I mean, for me, this was electrical engineering. This was semiconductor, and then I tried to broaden myself to different fields, different, I would say, friends from different majors by working, for example, for the Chinese Student Association, by joining league discussions. I think the T-shaped thing has two benefits. One is if you dig deeper into one field, I think a lot of this methodology, you will learn knowledge, you will do research, you will generate results. I think the methodology could be applicable to different field as well. So I think this is the biggest benefit of the going downside of the T-shape. And then by widening yourself, I think you get to expose to a lot of different thinking and different, I would say, friends. So this will give you some idea about one, what else can you learn or what you don't know, and then two is what other things which could be part of your career, which you could later on incorporate into your career. So I think this T-shape, I would say, training of yourself is the second thing I learned from school. And the third thing I learned is actually having a habit. This is very important to me as well, because a lot of times I think people talk about career, talk about achievement, but I think at the same time, while you're in school, you have a lot of resource to learn and then learn. I mean, in a company, you get to learn a lot of things that's in your own field. They have trainings, academies, but in school, you have a lot of other resource to learn about other stuff, like a music instrument or like some kind of sports. So I think having a big habit that goes a long way. It can be a very good, I would say, pressure reliever. It could be something useful to get new friends. So I think if I want to add a third thing to what I learned in school is to have a big habit, which actually goes a long way.
Very good. I remember launching, you actually used to be one of the MCs for Jun Wang associations a lot of time, right?
Oh.
And in the anchors and the MCs for that, that's very, very helpful. That's what you mean by that. And also, when you mentioned about the T-shape, it's actually well said in terms of what we really need, and not only when focusing on just our hard skills in terms of what our major is. Also, it's very important that as a person should be more well-rounded, both hard skills and soft skills as well. That can help in professionally
Yeah,
and on that.
definitely.
Yeah. Thank you. So, are you reading any books?
I am reading books.
Okay.
It's getting busier in China, but I'm still reading. Not as much as before, but I'm still reading books. Yeah.
Okay.
I wish I could read more, but
Okay.
yeah.
The reason I'm asking that question is because at LEAP we do have a book reading club, and the reason we have this club is because we want really help and the members, whoever really want to be successful in career, reading is really a big part of it.
Yeah.
So, and myself benefit a lot and from it, and then other success people, the same thing. So, I'm curious, like, what kind of books are you reading, or currently, what is the one of the most influential book you have ever read that you want to recommend to the audience? Yeah.
Okay. I don't read a lot of books these days, but I can tell what the book I was reading. The book I'm currently reading is a book called Decisive Moments in History. The author is Stefan Zweig. I could say in Chinese, the Chinese version is called 人类群星闪耀时. Author name is 施威格. So this is a book, I think it's a collection of, I would say, 10 to 15 very important moments in history. And then the book says, I mean, basically, for example, there's a war of Waterloo. And then there's also the first, I would say, telegraph from US to Europe. So these are, I would say, a lot of historical moments. Some are war related, some are technology related, and some are also even art related. So the book says a lot of this background stories behind these important moments, and then I'm still in the middle of it. I read it. I read half of it on the flight a couple of weeks ago. I think the learning I have is there's a certain randomness, or I think a lot of times luck also plays an important factor, even in one of those most important moments in history. But I would say a lot of the moments are a mix of preparation and luck. I think there's very famous similar Chinese saying as well. So luck is prepared for the one who really kind of prepared for it, right? So this book also has this kind of message. So a lot of times luck plays an important factor, but then you still have to work hard on it and be prepared for it. So that's the book I'm currently reading. And then if we talk about the other books I used to read, when I was back in college, even after college, I always like to read this science fiction books. To name a few, for example, The Foundation by Isaac Asimov, and then Dune by Frank Herbert. And also, I think I can recommend a Chinese sci-fi writer as well, Liu Cixin, the Three Body series. I like to read sci-fi books a lot. I think it's because, well, this was one of the reasons I get into engineering in the first place. I like to see how those, very futuristic kind of ideas or even setups come into being. So I thought that's one of the ways to get there. Two is I enjoy to see the level or the level of imagination the authors kind of present for the future. So I think that's very inspiring and mind-blowing. So I think that's, if I would recommend some book, I would say sci-fi books are the ones I would recommend now. And the three-body problem, I think that's one of the things I would recommend for anyone. I even gave this book to my ex-Broadcom colleagues when I exited Broadcom.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you. So let's see, we ask you another questions. And
Yeah.
after all of these years, and what is your definitions of a success? Do you think you currently accomplished a successful goal?
I mean, for sure, I'm still far away from success. I still have think a lot of things to work on, a lot of things to think about, and also have my challenge and confusions in life and career as well. But if I want to say success, I think it came with a couple of dimensions. Um, I think in terms of career, I think you need to have a meaning in your job. So there has to be some purpose and mission you are working towards. So I think that's one dimension of a success in terms of career. And then I think there's always this a factor of life. So basically, you have to have some fun in your life, some joy in your life. This also contribute to the definition of success, according to me. And then the third dimension, which is a little bit more abstract, is to have some freedom in your career choices. I think, I mean, you could be working very tirelessly on something, but I think in terms of being a successful or being success, you have to have some choice or some freedom in your choice. So I think to sum up, if I want to define what is success, is to have some meaning in your job, is to have some fun in your life, and to have some freedom in your choices.
Thank you. That's great
Yeah.
summary. It actually it matches with the definition with so-called encore career. And
Yeah.
there's things in America, people talking about a lot of time they're interested in the kind of encore career, and basically three attributes. The number one is they can make a living. They don't have worry about the money. And
Yeah.
secondly, they have this they also have this make them meaningful, like what you just said, right?
Yeah.
And thirdly is exactly like what you mentioned. So it's going to be that you have kind of like freedom, finance freedom, where you can do whatever you want to do.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that's
Yeah.
okay. That's great. I guess I'm probably going to ask you a last question before I open the floor to audience.
Sure.
So you have this very diverse experience, like you mentioned, in China, in Hong Kong, in America, in China, and then both in study and also working in America, corporate, and then later in China, even though it's still in the uh, global company corporate. So
Yeah.
with all of this very diversified experience, I'd like to hear your observation or insight about how a professional could be made more successful
Mm.
among this more globalized or and the diversified environment. Or in other words, you probably can, maybe if this question is too big or too vague, you probably can talk about like what are some of like differences you have seen forever between your colleagues in Broadcom, for example, United States,
Yeah.
and some of your colleagues back in China in BCG.
Mm. Okay, that is a pretty broad question, actually. Let me pick the easier way. So some
Sure.
difference I see from working here and working in China. I think I mean, first of all, this is all my personal experience. I think everybody will have a different career, and then you will meet different people. Even I think for someone who used to work for Broadcom and now work in BCG, I think your experience might be different compared with me because you work with different people. I think difference compared with working in Broadcom back then versus working in BCG right now is I think it's something we discussed earlier. So I think a couple of main difference. One is, of course, working here. I would say similar working experience in the US. I think things are. I think the pace is slightly faster in China. Like people, that things move forward a bit faster. people work in general longer hours than here, which is I think something people already, I mean, everybody kind of knows. So I think the pace and the time people devote to work is more in China. And then I think in consulting is even slightly longer, because for consulting you normally work longer hours than a corporate job. So I think the first difference is you see people in Chinese we say 卷, maybe that's a better word to use here. So people work slightly longer hours, people spend more time in career. But here I think people talk about work-life balance slightly more. And then people focus on the balance between career and job slightly more compared with China. I think that's the first thing I can say about the differences. I think the second thing is in terms of how many people you meet on a daily basis, for sure there's more people you interact with. I think number of interaction with people per day, I think that's another difference I can observe. Because I mean, if you compare an engineering job versus a consulting job, I think the soft part with the human touch part of it is obviously more in consulting than for Broadcom. And then I think if you add another thing is, I think as I mentioned earlier, so for consulting, you do see more diversity in terms of the topic you work on. For Broadcom, for engineering job, there's for sure also new things, like you're designing new product, you upgrade your previous product. But for consulting, I think for every project, you will see drastically different topics. So for day one, you could be working on some strategy topic for some company. And then 3 months later, you could be working on some operational process for organization design. So I think that's the third, I would say, main difference comparing, I would say, working BCG and in China versus working in Broadcom in US.